All right, let's hit up a recap of what we know so far real quick. So what we've already talked about is in digital strategy, we have two main goals, right? We have branding and we have business. And in branding goals, we've got things like relationship. We have community. We have awareness. In business goals, we have new, we have repeat, and we have cross-sell. And as I've said before, one of the challenges, one of the big problems for many businesses is the fact that what they look at is, I just need more business. I need more business. And they oversimplify to that particular aspect. But you have to understand that when you're building an effective marketing, you have to use a combination of these things. So we've talked about breaking it down and looking at percentages and where you're spending. We've also talked about the 5 pillars. And the 5 pillars were what?
Social media marketing.
Okay, social media marketing. Display. Search. Site. And CRM, which is customer relationship management. That includes things like email marketing, so on and so forth. Okay. So now that we know all that, what the last thing that we talked about before that was kind of the relationship between these pillars and these goals, right? Because there is a direct relationship between these things. Some things work better than others, right? And if you'll recall, that's where we drew out all the little arrows of this is good for this and this is not good for this and so on and so forth, right? And so we have to deal with that direct relationship. But now what we should have is we should have an idea based on what I need to accomplish in my business. These are the best places for me to put my primary focus on at the moment. Okay? Now we get to the moment of the truth. The moment of truth is the moment where you begin to use everything that you've uncovered in order to come up with a game plan, right? And so knowing all of this is part of it, but the next step in reality is we have to come up with a game plan of what we do. And so this is going to require us to look at 2 things. It's going to require us to look at budgets and human resources. Okay? Because if part of my deal says I need to be putting a large portion into display ads, but I don't have a budget for that, that can be problematic, right? So let's first look at budget. This is the budget areas where we start taking a look at this new strategy that we have developed, and we're going to compare it first with our historical expenditures, right? So it's what have I been spending money on, and where might I need to redirect a little bit of this, okay? And so I have to ask myself a couple of questions. The first question I need to ask myself is the cost of my new strategy higher or lower than my previous strategies? Why do we want to know that? Cost analysis, okay. Is the cost of my new strategy higher or lower than my previous strategy? And why do we want to know that? Pass that cost analysis.
We know what our budget was and the result we got.
Okay.
Now we know what our budget is and the result we want to get.
Okay, so what it was and what we got, what it is and what we want to get. Perfect. Now, in addition to that, the question realistically becomes, if the cost is higher, right?
Where's the money coming from?
What are we going to do? Yeah, where's the money going to come from? What do we need to do with that? If the cost is lower, what can we do with the extra money? Absolutely. Now, the second question I have to ask myself in the budget area is my new strategy, is the newer strategy expecting a higher or lower return on investment than my previous strategy? Is my new strategy expecting a higher or lower return on investment than my previous strategy? Now, why would I put a strategy in place if I'm expecting a lower return on investment? Why would I?
Only if we didn't have the funds, would that not be?
No, it has nothing to do with funds at that particular point. Why would I put a new strategy in place if I am expecting a lower return on investment within that particular strategy?
According to our growth,
According to growth?
according to what we're looking for, if we're,
Say it one more time.
Why would I put a new strategy in place if I am expecting a lower return on investment than my original strategy?
Because it may be time to shift either the branding or one of the pillars.
So lots of times the one thing that people want to directly look at is they want to directly look at return on investment, but direct return on investment is not always the best indicator of the effectiveness of a strategy or the need of a strategy, right? Case in point, awareness. If my branding is off, not enough people know about my business, and I'm doing awareness campaigns, should I expect a direct return on investment from that? Should I expect a direct return on investment from that?
say the first part again,
If my business is off, my branding is off, and I need more people to become aware of my business, so I start an awareness campaign, should I expect a direct return on investment?
I would say no,
You say no, why?
because maybe I'm wrong, but I'm thinking about what your example of Alexander Gennaro,
Okay.
and then how good he is at branding.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with his business. I mean, I know eventually it does,
Mm-hmm.
but does it with return on investment immediately? Not necessarily, I wouldn't think.
Okay. So there's two types of return on investment. There's a direct return on investment and there's an indirect return on investment, right?
So I would think that would be more of a direct, indirect.
So branding is more about indirect return on investment. Business is more about direct return on investment, right? And so when I'm looking at these things, not everything you do in marketing is directly related to a direct return on investment. It's a big difference between marketing and advertising. If I place an ad in a newspaper, I expect people will call me from that ad, right? I'm expecting a direct return on investment. If I'm placing ads on Facebook, right, to get new business, then I'm expecting to get a direct return on investment. When I am doing awareness campaigns, then I'm expecting an indirect return on investment. Okay? So, meaning I'm going to spend money knowing I may or may not get it back anytime soon. Okay? But the point is, with awareness, is you lose 100% of the business from people that don't know you exist. So if they don't know you exist, they can't do business with you anyway. They have to become aware of you before they can do business with you. So we do campaigns to make more people within the target market aware, so that then we can do other things to help lead them to actually doing business with you. And you see this stuff all the time. Think about Coca-Cola. 99% of Coca-Cola's marketing these days is relationship, community, and awareness. It's not necessarily business related, right? It's branding related. Now, they may be spending billions of dollars a year on that with campaigns all over the place. have a coat. You got the polar bears, right? You got all kinds of stuff. Why? Brand recognition, brand recognition, brand recognition. The more you have that brand recognition when you're in the store, the more likely you are to pick up one of their products. They know that psychologically, right? So it's one of the hard things for a lot of people to reconcile with is part of your strategy may actually reduce your return on investment necessarily. Okay? At least initially. So these things are more about creating indirect return on investment. These things are more about creating direct return on investment. Okay? Now that we have the money part figured out, though, what we have to do is we have to ask ourselves, do we have the means to back up this strategy with the manpower? Right? That's our human resources aspect of this. So in that, we have to ask 3 questions. The first is, do I currently have the manpower that is required to bring this new strategy into fruition? The second question is, if not, who or what do I need to reallocate? Now, by manpower and by human resources, I'm not just talking about employees. Okay? This could be employees, it could be subcontractors, it could be vendors. It's any person that could do, or organization that could handle whatever it is that you're needing right here. So it could be in-house or out of house, right? So if not, what do we need to reallocate? Because especially for a lot of small businesses are way better outsourcing these things than they are trying to do it in-house because of the sheer amount of time and reallocation necessary in order to be able to handle this stuff, right? It kind of goes back to something. I was having a conversation with someone the other day about reallocation. In our conversation, we were talking about what we would charge to do, kind of what he was wanting to do, and I said it would be about $5,000 a month. And, it's going to cost you about what one decent employee is going to cost you on a monthly basis. He said, $5,000 a month? Well, couldn't I just have someone that already works for me do this? Sure you could. However, if you want to have someone that already works for you, that's not their area of expertise, then you're going to have to spend thousands of dollars on training them. Okay? You're going to have to waste the time on training that particular person and hope all of that pays off relatively quickly with a return on investment of any kind, right?
And have somebody duplicate what the 40 hours are already putting in.
And he also said, couldn't I just hire somebody that's experienced to be able to do this kind of stuff? Absolutely you could. However, with what you're talking about, you're going to have to hire an experienced copywriter. That's about $60,000 a year. You're going to have to hire an experienced marketing person. Again, another $60,000 to $70,000 a year. So you're also going to have to hire an assistant for those people to handle the menial tasks so they can handle the big stuff. So let's call that another $30,000 a year. So you're at $150,000 a year versus 60. What's the better investment, right? And so again, the argument there for outsourcing. Now, some businesses are large enough that they already have their own marketing department. So then reallocation of human resources within that it can be more effective. It's a lot easier to do. But for the small guys, for those types of businesses, it may be easy to have someone on staff that's already helping with some of that stuff help with it, but it may also be advantageous to outsource. Okay. Which is that third question, do we need to hire for a particular need internally or externally? Right? And then that leads us to strategy redevelopment. Strategy redevelopment. Strategy redevelopment happens when we come across inconsistencies between theory and reality. So remember, everything that we've done so far, though it has practical steps to it, it's all theory. With the inconsistencies between theory and reality. Okay? Strategy redevelopment happens when we discover inconsistencies between theory and reality. This is where we also have to ask the question of why are there historical differences between our old strategy and what we're looking at for our new strategy, right? It doesn't mean that the new strategy has to resemble the old strategy by any stretch of the imagination, right? It may be a complete 180 in that. But one of the problems that a lot of people will have is they end up coming up with a plan because that they can't put in motion because they lack certain things, right? And so that's where this strategy redevelopment comes in, to be able to say, okay, well, in theory, this should have worked, or in theory, this should work. However, I need to make sure that I have the resources in place in order to get this. I can't necessarily just jump in feet first into the pool without having the appropriate resources to have this stuff done. And so I have to ask myself some questions about filling in the voids, right? So first question is who's going to need additional training, right? With any change in strategy, whether it be internal or external, right? With any change in strategy, then there are going to be things that in the business that change overall. And so there will be additional training needed, right? So it's kind of like when we went through and rebuilt the back end of the website to make it a hub to be able to work with Amazon, to be able to work with eBay, to be able to work with the various things and all of that. I mean, all of that is great, but it required training, right? So your staff had to be trained on how to utilize these resources, right? So it's the same with virtually anything. Who's going to need to be trained? Who's going to be in charge of overseeing, right? What additional training is needed? That's a competency issue. So when we're looking at strategy redevelopment, the first thing is competency. The second thing is high priority means. High priority means. So high priority means just says is, what do we need? What is the largest priority that we have in developing our campaigns? Now, one of the things that we often say is that your ROI should never be sacrificed. Your overall ROI should never be sacrificed in order to implement strategies. But wait a minute, I just said that sometimes we're going to implement strategies that will change ROIs, right? So what it doesn't mean is it doesn't mean that if I've got this and it's working, but it's not exactly what I need to accomplish, I need to shut this off completely and implement this instead. I may need to reallocate, right? That's high priority means, taking portion of my means and prioritizing that so I can still get some ROI from it, so my business doesn't just stop while I'm running awareness campaigns, for example, right? But I'm also reallocating that and prioritizing into the highest priorities of what it is that I'm doing, right? So the question I have to ask myself is, do you have any means, opportunities, do you have anything that you're doing currently that is already generating a very high ROI, right? Do I have something that I'm doing currently that's already generating a very high ROI and it should not be reallocated? If you can't honestly answer that yes, then reallocate everything. But some people do have things that generate a very high ROI. I mean, I'll give you an example from one of my businesses in our insurance brokerage, right? In the insurance brokerage business, 95% of our new business comes from one specific marketing method. Okay? And so 95% of that new business right now is coming from one specific marketing method. It would be insane to say, okay, I'm going to implement this over here. I'm going to reallocate my entire budget to this over here and stop doing that one marketing method. Right? It would be insane.
Let me ask what it is, what you're doing to get 95%.
Yes, I do. No, it's we have a referral network. We have a referral network. So they have a referral network that is done in a very specific manner that generates the vast majority of that business. So, matter of fact, it's probably been 10 years since any kind of ads have been placed or anything else in that business because of that. Yeah, and that's a high priority means. Yeah. Right? It literally would be silly to get rid of that to try to implement something else immediately. Right? So I have to prioritize that and work around it while building the other things because it is generating such a high ROI. Costs in strategy redevelopment. Sometimes in business, you come across a predicament where you're going to spend a chunk of money and find something better later that's cheaper. Okay? And it's always better to work with what you have until you see a positive return if you can work with what you have, right? And so these are called sunk costs. Sunk costs means I spent way more money than I should have on getting something. And so I've already sunk the money into it. So let me work with it best I can, right? And it kind of goes back to something. Yeah, instead of just shutting it off and implementing something else. And so it may be like, I was talking to somebody the other day that was looking at some of the things that we do, and he was actually talking about some of the things in one of the businesses that we do, and he was like, well, we use this and this and this, and we use this better, and and so on and so forth. And I'm like, well, that's great, but I've already spent money on this, so we're going to keep using this. What you're doing may be cheaper, but I've already invested a ton into this over here, so we're going to keep using it, and I'm gonna make it work, right? Because I know, matter of fact, like CRM, we've changed CRM systems, I don't know, a handful of times over the years. Yeah, three that you know of, right? And it's a complete undertaking. I mean, one of the CRM systems and part of it for us was an investment to combine certain things that were done in multiple softwares, right? That one effort to combine 5 things that were done in 5 different softwares into one piece of software actually took us 6 months to get that done. Okay? Took 6 months. So talk about sunk costs. And the cost, not just the software cost, but the HR cost that was involved with all of that, it was nearly $100,000.
Wow.
Right?
What would be your recommendation for a CRM for digital? What do you think would be the best CRM?
In order to make a recommendation for a CRM, you really have to ask the question, what am I going to do with it? What do I need it to do? Right? Because CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management. So you could realistically use Microsoft Excel as a CRM if you don't have that many customers. You know what I'm saying? So the question realistically becomes, as we look at these things and we look at the cost involved with these things, it's what do I need it to do? Am I tracking existing customers? So if all I'm doing is tracking existing customers and doing things like invoices, then QuickBooks, right?
We want to do like emails, like automated drip emails, maybe monthly newsletter or something that goes out, or, just to keep,
Awareness.
yeah.
Okay, so there's a difference between automated emails and drip emails.
Okay, well, automated emails.
Yeah. So the difference between the
There's
two,
a difference in automated emails and.
automated emails and drip emails.
Dribblings, okay.
Okay. So what happens in these kind of things, especially in a CRM, is you'll look at softwares like Constant Contact or MailChimp or something like that. Those are email-based softwares. They're not actually CRMs. Okay, a lot of people think they are, but they're not actually CRMs. They're email softwares. And so what happens with those is those can drip emails. So you can set things up. You can set up with either of those. Like, for example, whenever you post a new blog on your a new article on your blog, that it will automatically email that out to everyone on the list. You can do those kinds of things. However, those things do not allow, even though that in essence sounds like an automation, it's more of a drip.
Is that what Facebook is when you get an email saying it's
No.
been posted? What is that?
It's just a notification.
It's just a notification.
Yeah. So the other thing that these things can do is they can set up things like autoresponders. So in essence, a sequence that if someone fills out a form on your website, then it'll start a sequence of emails that go out to those people over time, but there's no automation truly with that. Automation in emails, when we talk about those kind of things, really it looks more like this person is interested in this, and so they get an email about that, and if they click on this in the email, right, then this may happen. So it's easier to set up sequencing and be able to set up things like segmentations and so on and so forth. I mean, day-to-day cleaning, for example, if you do residential, commercial, and post-construction, well, those are three completely different markets. So it would be three completely different sets of information that come to those people, right? You don't want to send somebody something about construction cleanup that is a potential residential cleaning client, right? So you need segmentation in those kinds of things and to be able to set those kind of deals up. But also have things like if you send out an email, maybe you're running a special for the month, refer somebody and get $50 off, and they can click on a link to send a deal to a friend, right? So you want to be able to track all that. That's really where CRM comes in those types of automations, but it also allows you to track things like potential sales or business that you may have with someone, so on and so forth. That's where a software like an Active Campaign type software or an Agile CRM type software,
Do you have a recommendation of one that you,
I'll have to consider it.
use or prefer?
Yeah, I mean, I will consider it. So, yes, short answer to that. But I'll get with that's outside of our scope, so I'll get with you later on that. But this is where we have to look at. Matter of fact, something that I had to look at the other day. In costs, there's really two questions, right? The first is, do you have any resources that you haven't used yet, right? And I actually got to thinking about this the other day, because I was thinking about some of the things that we have purchased in the past that we really haven't used. But as I was thinking about it, they would make great things to integrate into a suite of services that we offer, right? And it'd be easy to integrate since we already own it. So it's one of those things. Do you have any resources that you haven't used yet? And so that would be able to go into our suite of services that we offer, but it also actually would be able to help us with our goals in this for ourselves because of what it is specifically that these things do, right? So do you have any resources you haven't used yet? And then the second question in cost is, what resources have you sunk large costs into, right? So that helps us understand about what we need to do. Discounts. There are also times when you find something for a really good deal and you just can't pass it up. So when something like this comes around and it favors ROI, it favors your strategy, then it can be beneficial depending on the circumstance. So the question becomes, are there any deals out there that you can take advantage of? We actually, when we're doing things, this is kind of one of the areas that we focus a lot on for clients, right? Because for most of our clients, what happens, the way we work anyway, is the more stuff you get with us, the cheaper overall things get, right? Because as far as we're concerned, I don't need, if I have a client that only has one thing with us, then I need to make a good ROI on that one thing, right? But when we have a client that's got 3, 4, 5, 6 different services, products, whatever with us, then I don't have to have quite the same ROI on each thing for it to still be a good ROI for the client overall, right? So what we do is we'll offer a lot of things, services that we may offer to the public at one particular price if it's a single purchase. But in the event that it's a multiple purchase or you've got a bunch of other stuff with us, then we'll offer something significantly, we may offer it significantly cheaper. And there have been plenty of times where somebody's done enough business with us that we'll just throw in free things here or there. We'll do it. It would normally have a cost associated with it, but we'll do it just because it's good business.
Like the guy with the fireworks.
Like the guy with the fireworks, absolutely, yeah. And so it's good business, right? It generates a better relationship to generate more repeat and cross-sell business, right? And so the question is from the vendors that you're currently using, do they offer anything else that falls in line with what your needs are that you can get at a good deal? Right? And suppliers. The last thing with that, and it's something that I'm a big fan of, just because I'm all about simplifying things as much as I possibly can, is there are a lot of systems out there that you can use that you can do multiple things with. And so in any type of system or relationship, whatever you can get from a supplier, if I can get more of what I need from that one place, then it saves me the time of having to go out to other places, right? So it's kind of what I was saying, it kind of goes along the lines with discounts for what we do, but it makes no sense. I mean, we had this one client a couple of years ago that had a service that we were taking care of, right? And I'd had the conversation with that particular client of, well, we can do this and this and this and this, and come to find out later, the client had actually went to and purchased everything that they purchased from a different company, right? All of it was stuff we did, right? And it was very confusing to me at first. It's like, I mean, dude, do you not like me? I mean, did I upset you somehow? Is there some reason why you didn't want to do more business with us or whatever? And the short answer of it was he was purely looking at cost. And so, for him, when he was looking at the suppliers, well, this company said they would do it for $25 a month less. So I'm going to save that $25 and do that. And I thought, that really makes no sense. Because in order to get service on what you're doing, you now have to go to 5 different places. So effectively, you've saved yourself a few dollars, but you're now increasing the amount of time required for you to spend dealing with all of this stuff. So one of the things for years people have told us that they appreciate so much is the fact that they can make one phone call and pretty much get whatever they need taken care of. Not a big deal, right? And so when I look at that, I have to think about suppliers. Are there systems? The question is are there systems that can be used for multiple tasks, multiple things? A good CRM should be able to be used for multiple things, right? Even when I look at all of these, I should be able to get multiple things out of each of these, right? If I'm doing it right. Like Pat, for example, you got a website. Website is great. What do we say it's great for?
Awareness.
Okay? It's not great for awareness.
No.
You gotta search.
People have to know you
No.
exist.
They have to know you exist before they can get
Wrong column.
there. Wrong column, that's right.
Build relationships with the brand.
Okay. Relationships. Site's good for relationships. Okay, so your website's good for relationships, but you do e-commerce too, right? So you have both consulting and e-commerce in what it is that you do, right? So it's good for that. But what else does your site function as?
It can be linked with the CRM.
Okay, it's linked with your CRM, right? So it helps build lead, it helps with lead generation. What else does it do?
It helps in community.
Helps in community, okay. What else does your site do?
E-commerce.
Okay, e-commerce, consulting. You have inventory control management built into the back end of it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have inventory control management. You have sales control management, right? So you're not literally having to go here to list things and here to list things and here to list things and having to duplicate things across many different resources anymore, right? So it's become, in essence, in the back end, in your back end of it, it's become a centralized hub, right? So it serves many purposes, right? See what I'm getting at? So it's the same thing when you talk about suppliers. It's what can you do or build? What systems do you have or can you have that can complete multiple tasks? Why is that important? Time, okay. Money. It may cost you exactly the same as multiple systems cost. Convenience, okay. It also reduces the chance of error, right?
Inventory, that's a big deal.
Absolutely. Inventory is a big deal. So it reduces the chance of error. I mean, for us, we've gotten integrated our calendaring system, appointment system. We've got our email marketing system. We've got we actually have a merchant account. We have our ordering system. We have our client tracking system. We actually have our client file boxes, so where we actually store client files and all that kind of stuff built into one. We have all of that and more built into one CRM, right? Literally, we were having to go to 5, 6, 7 different places before to do all that, but we've condensed into the one, and that's good from us, right? It centralizes the business. It also makes it easier when I'm dealing with staff and those kind of things to be able to train, get help, get assistance, and I don't have to worry about making sure that they know as many different softwares. It's more processes within a CRM as opposed to many different CRMs, right? Just using that as an example, the CRM, but it's the same with any of the pillars, okay? So as we ask ourselves these questions and we answer these questions, this really is the moment of truth. It's where's my budget at? Where's my organization at for human resources? How do I need to redevelop my existing strategy? Right? Once I get that in place, then we'll be ready for next, which is the moment of strategy. So this will be our final. It's where we actually begin to implement all this kind of stuff. Make sense?